Hello, dear learners. Welcome to Shelley's Langlet Lab. I am Dr. Shelley. Today we are going to have an understanding of A Prayer for My Daughter by W.B. Yeats. W.B. Yeats was an Irish poet. You can see his picture here. And he was born in Dublin, Ireland. He was a modern symbolist poet. And he lived in an era where he saw World War I and World War II. And this very much reflected his style of writing and also his collection of poetry. Meanwhile, Ireland was also in war with Britain. The Irish were fighting for their independence. Even Yeats, Morgan, Lady Gregory, and many more were involved in such activities. Now, there are some important facts that you need to know if you are preparing for NET, SET, or any other exam. So, he won Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. He founded the Abbey Theatre with Lady Gregory and Edward Martin. He also founded Rhymers Club with Lady Gregory. He loved a woman whose name was Maud Gonne, but she refused his proposal a lot of times. And later on, Yeats married Georgiana Hyde Lees, and she was much younger than Yeats. Yeats also wrote the preface of Tagore's Gitanjali, and his other important works are Sailing to Byzantium, The Second Coming, The Tower, Easter 1916. And also Byzantium, which is a sister poem to Sailing to Byzantium, and Among School Children, in which he talks about Morgon. In Easter 1916, he talks about the Easter Rising, a riot that happened during the Irish national movement. Now we will move on to the background of the poem A Prayer for My Daughter. It was published in 1920 in the collection Michael Rubatus and the Dancer. It was addressed to his newly born daughter Anne, and it also reflects the feeling of Irish nationalism. There is one more thing that you need to know, that at that time Ireland was actually fighting for its freedom. From 1801 to 1922, Ireland was a part of United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. And from the 1980s, there had been agitation movements for home rule. And gradually, some parts of Ireland became the Irish Free State in 1922. And this poem also reflects that chaos that Yeats saw in his life. So that is why we can say that this poem also symbolizes the Irish War of Independence. There are many references that we find and we can relate to the Irish national movement from the poem. Then there are some important references of Maud Gonne, Lady Gregory, Helen of Troy, Goddess Aphrodite, John McBride. By the way, John McBride was the husband of Maud Gonne, and Lady Gregory was another important person in Yeats's life. Helen of Troy, Goddess Aphrodite, they are mythological references which we will talk later on. Now, moving on to the text of the poem A Prayer for My Daughter. Once more the storm is howling, and half hid under this cradle hood and coverlid, my child sleeps on. The poet says that the storm has come again. It is howling, it is making too much noise, and my child, who is half hid, who is not fully protected, is sleeping under the cradle hood. There is no obstacle but Gregory's wood and one bare hill, and there is no obstacle between the storm and my child, except the Gregory's wood, the estate of Lady Gregory, and one bare hill, whereby the haystack and roof leveling wind bred on the Atlantic can be stayed. And for an hour I have walked and prayed because of the great gloom that is in my mind. And then he says that I have walked and prayed for this child for an hour, and there is great gloom in my mind. The stanza reflects the inner feelings of Yeats. The storm is not only external but also internal. Also, the storm may symbolize the Irish War of Independence. He talks about the gloom, the sadness, that seriousness that he can feel in his mind. Then in the next stanza, he says, I have walked and prayed for this young child an hour, and heard the sea wind scream upon the tower, and under the arches of the bridge, and scream in the elms above the flooded stream, imagining in excited reverie that the future years had come, dancing to a frenzied drum out of the murderous innocence of the sea. In this stanza, the poet worries too much for his daughter's future. He says, I can hear the sea wind scream everywhere, near the tower, under the bridge, and also in the woods. I can listen to that chaos now. Then he says, and I can imagine in an excited reverie, his imagination makes him feel the tension. And he says that in such excited imagination, I can feel that the future years have come now, and they have come out of the murderous innocence of the sea. The sea is innocent, but it has been proved murderous for itself, and it is dancing to a crazy beat. He says that the future years are going to be not very safe for my daughter, and Annie's innocence can prove murderous to her own self. So here we see that Yeats is actually worried for his daughter's future. He had seen two world wars, and also the Irish War of Independence is going on. The world has become too much chaotic. So here he is very much worried, and that is why he says that the future years have come and they are dancing to a frenzied drum. Here the future years are not dancing, but the world is dancing to a frenzied drum. The people are dancing to a crazy beat, which is not good for the world. Then in the next stanza, he actually starts praying for his daughter, and he tells us what he actually wishes for her. He says, may she be granted beauty and yet not beauty to make a stranger's eye distraught, or hers before a looking glass for such, being made beautiful overmuch. He says, I don't want my daughter to be so much beautiful that she may disturb a stranger's eye, that she may attract too many men in her life. Or I don't want her to look at herself in the mirror for long times. And he also says that if one is made too much beautiful, he may consider that being beautiful is everything one wants. And being beautiful gets you so many gifts. You get so many friends, you are surrounded by flatterers, and he says that this may lead to lose the natural kindness that one person has in his heart. He says that maybe the heart revealing intimacy that chooses right and never find a friend. And if my daughter would be surrounded by too many flatterers, she won't be able to choose the right person in her life, and she will never be able to find a friend. Helen being chosen found life flat and dull, and later had much trouble from a fool, while that great queen that rose out of the spray, being fatherless, could have her way. Here he says that Helen, who was the daughter of Zeus and Leda, a Greek mythological character she had much trouble from a fool. Fool is here Paris, who was the prince of Troy. Helen was already the queen of King Menelaus, and because she was beautiful, she got everything. She was the queen. Also, she found life very flat and very boring. She got everything too easily. And then later, when she eloped with Paris, which actually eventually led to the destruction of Troy. So he says here, by putting the reference of Helen, that Helen also did something very foolish that eventually led to the destruction of the city of Troy. While that great queen that rose out of the spray, being fatherless, could have her way. Here he gives another example of goddess Aphrodite or Venus in Greek mythology. He says that she rose out of the spray, she rose out of the sea, and she was fatherless. She was not born to a man and a woman, but she rose out of the spray. So, because she was fatherless, she could have chosen any man she wanted. And Venus, Aphrodite, is the goddess of beauty, knowledge, everything. So, he says, even that woman, Aphrodite, chose a bandy legged smith for man. She also married a bandy legged blacksmith. Here, the reference is to Hephaestus, and later on, she betrayed him also. It's certain that fine women eat a crazy salad with their meat, whereby the horn of plenty is undone. Here he says that it's certain, that Yeats is very much certain that the women who are born with beauty and who are intelligent, who are beauty with brain, they eat a crazy salad with their meat. Meat is something that is of good quality, and salad is something that is crazy, not having too much taste. So here he says that beautiful women don't know how to eat, don't know that what to mix with what, whereby the horn of plenty is undone. And the horn of plenty is another reference from Greek mythology, which is called cornucopia. It is actually the horn of a goat, which is depicted as, which is overflowing with flowers, fruits, and corn, and it stands for fertility, prosperity, and procreation. So here, the horn of plenty is given by Zeus to his caretaker, and whosoever has this horn of plenty can get anything he wishes for. So here he says that the beautiful women could have had whatever they wanted in their lives, but they did not use this horn of plenty, and that is why it remains useless. Here is the reference is also to Morgan, whom Yeats loved very much and also proposed to her many times, but she did not choose him, but later on married John McBride, who was a fat person, and Yeats also called him in one of his poems a fat fool. Now, in this lecture, I am only going to cover these four stanzas because the video is going to be too long. The next stanzas and the structure of the poem, the important figures of speech would be discussed in the next video. If you have watched this video so far, thank you so much. And do not forget to like, share, and subscribe.